Strike three. Witness history in West Lafayette. Lauren Derkowski completes her second career no-hitter in as many days.
Not too shabby. Congratulations to Lauren Derkowski. Back-to-back no-nos. You don't hear about that every day. The Michigan softball team, Michigan softball Twitter, thanks to them. Nice weekend. Nice back-to-back games there for the Wolverines. Obviously, welcome into the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon football on this Monday, the 17th. Hope you had a great weekend. There were Michigan's rivals out there having their spring games, and part of what we're going to be talking about today, as I'm sure you took a gander, or if you didn't, I did, and I'll tell you what I thought over there in Ohio State, Scarlet and Gray games specifically, and we've got highlights. We'll give you an update on the Michigan basketball roster. That's something we're keeping an eye on every day. But we're going to start with a nice weekend for the Michigan football team, recruiting-wise, as Michigan is able to land another offensive lineman. That's right, another offensive lineman, and it's Blake Frazier. Down goes Frazier, the four-star offensive lineman out of Austin, Texas, 6'6", 260 pounds. That makes a dozen commitments for this upcoming season for Michigan, the 24-year. Last year at this time, myself included, looking at this and, I'll say crying about Michigan's recruiting class, lamenting about the name, the image and likeness, and how Michigan can't compete there without paying money up front. And they also can't compete with their admissions, being able to get transfers. And it really felt like Michigan was behind the eight ball. But a year later, things are looking way up. And yeah, as much as I was crying, I still held in there and said, we got to take a look. I'm going to be patient because I remember Harbaugh had a wobble class, ended up being a great class. It really helped him power along the way these past two college football appearances. So if we were sitting in the same spot we were last year, my approach, and I think a lot of others would be different. But, you look right now, Michigan's got a class and, they're about halfway done. That's ranked number 3 in the country by rivals. It's pretty good, judged by anybody. And if they can stay in the top 5, that's the idea. Stay in the top 5 in recruiting, stay in the top 4 when it comes to the college football playoffs this year, and beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten, and you're cooking and life is good. And if you're a Michigan fan, life is good right now. And congratulations goes out to the Frazier family and the Michigan football staff for being able to land Mr. Frazier. And, you can look a long time. I don't know if you'll find a better picture than young Blake with his daddy's helmet on that he posted a couple weeks ago. And yes, thank you, Andres. Taking victory laps or patting myself on the back. I don't know, if that's really my style, but Andres, the truth is there. I have no problem calling myself out if I get something wrong on a prediction. So how about 2 in a row when it comes down to a 50 in forecast? Boom! Getting that one with Blake Frazier right. Now, you can go out there and, any analyst can go ahead and just make a prediction, make a future cast. This one I had heard, and I told you I had heard some things about Frazier, specifically at a practice, and just how emotional he was after hearing Jim Harbaugh speak at the middle of the field. And he was almost brought to tears. He was so fired up. After I heard that, I went from thinking that Michigan was in a good position to placing a forecast. So thank you, Andres, for remembering. What's it mean for Michigan? Well, they're doing pretty good overall in recruiting, and I'd have to say they're doing great when it comes to recruiting offensive linemen. You know, I mentioned they have a dozen commitments. 4 of them now are offensive linemen. 2 from the state of Ohio, and Ben Roebuck and Luke Hamilton. Andrew Sprague, who committed last week out of Kansas City, Missouri, and then Frazier, whose dad went to Michigan, and he's currently down in the Lone Star State, hails from Austin, Texas. But Roebuck, Hamilton, Sprague, and Frazier. Yeah, it sounds like attorneys at law. We'll see. Maybe they can all, come up with that kind of nickname when they're rolling out there from left to right. They'll need one more commitment. We'll get to that in a second to complete an offensive line out of the same class. Who knows if that'll happen? But a Roebuck, Hamilton, Sprague, Frazier sounds pretty good if the broadcast team is out there and rolling those names out there. Michigan's not done with the big fellas up front, the big uglies, if you will. They've got a guard prospect out of Florida, which things, if I was a little flimsy, and I don't want to say flimsy, if I was just following the leaders, Josh Henschke, the publisher of the Maize and Blue Review, I believe he has a forecast in. So does Trevor McHugh on Guarnera, Jake Guarnera, a 3-star guard out of Ponte Verde, Florida. Nice area for Guarnera. And then Michigan still, after a couple other highly thought of offensive line prospects, Max Anderson has got a great offer sheet, and so does Bennett Warren, a 3-star lineman from Texas. Actually, Anderson and Warren are both from Texas, so that would add, they can't get, I don't think, all 3 of those guys, maybe. But Guarnera, and then either one or Anderson and Warren, you call it what it is. Maybe the greatest offensive line haul in Michigan football history, at least at the outgoing. There's a tough bar when you think about, I think about the 97 championship team that Michigan had. Starting on their left side, they had 2 freshman linemen. Jeff Backus out of Norcross, Georgia, was the starting left tackle on that 97 Michigan team. And then Steve Hutchinson, not Aiden Hutchinson, no relation, Steve Hutchinson, who came in as a defensive lineman. He was out of Florida, Fort Lauderdale, I think. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, switched over and became a guard. It was a good move for Hutchinson. Worked out well for Michigan. Worked out well for both of those as they went in the NFL draft, and they went back-to-back. It was Backus by the Lions, Hutchinson by the Vikings. Of course, Hutchinson went on to get canonized in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And Backus may have made more money than anybody. I mean, I don't know about now. They've been eclipsed, but for a while there, Jeff Backus made himself a pretty penny. I think he's living around these parts. I thought I saw him at the, I don't want to reveal where I think he stayed up in Michigan and lives here. Sometimes you got to watch myself in what I'm saying and everything. That would be one of the cases. Although I don't know how big of a deal it would have been. So all this recruiting and stuff going on, which is really exciting. We'll get to some of your feedback in a moment. I do want to tell you folks this. It's great to have me as a piece of the puzzle when it comes down to what's going on, the movers and shakers in Michigan. But if you want to know what's going on right now with the real experts, you'll want to join up with the Maize and Blue Review. And you can do that today by going to michigan.rivals.com. You join up the Maize and Blue Review. You get all of the accurate information with all the histrionics and everything else that apparently some of the other people that deal with this are engaged in. It's the facts, and it's entertaining and good reporting. Join the Maize and Blue Review today. Again, go to michigan.rivals.com. That's how you do it. Okay. There was all of those practices going on over the weekend. Michigan had theirs 2 weeks ago on April the 1st, and then Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan State all had their spring flings over the weekend. Great weather out there for all of them. Not so much today. You'd say, hey, why doesn't Michigan just move them back? But then you get a day like today where you get snow squalls out there. Let's see what some of the feedback is taking place today. Antoine is first up and says, last year I told you about Ohio State being soft and weak. I smell blood in the water again. We're going to hand out another whooping. OSU is very fragile. That old line is weak. I think he means O-line. And can't take another injury. And that quarterback is not scaring me at all. I predict a 9-3 record when it comes to Ohio State. Well, the quarterback you mentioned is Kyle McCord, who was out there. A little bit of a mixed bag for McCord, but if you're just taking, and I'll do the same thing, I'll go take a little bit more out of spring because it's happening right now. And, we don't need to be measured and say, hey, let's keep in mind that it was the spring game. We all know it was the spring game. But yeah, McCord, he wasn't out there making anybody like, ooh, oh no, this is the next Stroud or this is the next Fields. And I remember watching Justin Fields a couple of years ago, and I'm like, come on, what's this guy? This guy's the greatest thing ever. He wasn't too bad, but it's not like I was sitting out there watching McCord thinking, oh no, I don't know how Michigan's going to be able to stop this guy. That is something I understand if people were watching the Scarlet and Gray scrimmage, not being impressed very much with McCord. Andre's following up Antoine saying those boys didn't want to play tough in Columbus. Almost a disgrace. Wow, a disgrace. Richard hopefully got a clean bill of health from the doctor's office late last week. He's wishing everybody a happy Monday. John telling it like it is. The suck nuts look soft, he says. He's not pulling any punches. Richard feels better after watching Ohio's spring struggle. About that. He's already feeling better about things. How about that? Let's see if we have some more here. The Buckeyes are so bad they had to hand out points like Oprah hands out cars. You get points and you get a point here. Everybody gets a point. Yeah, we'll get to more on that coming up. Their scoring system in what was going on there. Trevor, the aforementioned expert who put the forecast on, Trevor weighing in, he says he feels good about Guarnera, Max, and Bennett, maybe first come, first serve spot for number 6 along that offensive line. Thanks so much, Trevor, for watching and weighing in. Yeah, you guys have been, conducting the forecast, in concert, and you guys have been ringing the bell and doing a great job. I just got to mention, even going back to last year, and it's along the same route of giving props where, props are due. Josh Henske, when the predictions were coming out, season-long predictions, somebody, had, called up and wanted experts' opinions, and they went to Henske, and he picked 12-0. And when I saw the 12-0, I was like, wow, Josh, going in there for Michigan, throwing the old 12-0 up there. And I thought, man, that's a bold prediction. Nobody else was picking 12-0. And then he rang the bell on it, which was very impressive. You pick 12-0 and it happens. Well, that's something that you have for a lifetime. That's a tattoo right across the face. I don't know. No, that's a good tattoo right on your house. You say right across the face, but I don't know. Younger people do get it right across the face. Maybe they'd be like, hey, that is great looking tat. Richard about McCord saying he wasn't the real McCoy. John saying most of his Buckeye friends were bragging about the attendance. That's all they've got to cheer about. That, and it was 80 degrees. That one still struck the right chord with me, Richard. I was on the play of words. I still feel good about that. Antoine, even with a better one, saying they may need to cut the cord when it comes down. A tie going somewhere where we're going to go tomorrow or Thursday, talking about Penn State. Are you guys watching all the spring games? Penn State didn't look too bad. I got more faith in him being better. All right, let's get a little bit more onto the practice. I watched and I took some notes on it. First of all, when it comes to Ohio State, I think people are right. I took this from the Ohio State Twitter page. I thought it was interesting that down at the bottom, even when they're just playing their schedule, they had ton team up north. They can't. I'm surprised that they were able to put the M's and not have those X'd out on their schedule, like you'll find almost everywhere when it comes down to Ohio State. But it's a pretty simple schedule. The crossovers at Whiskey with their new head coach, maybe they'll be all right. And at Purdue, Michigan has that crossover as well. So same schedule, Big Ten wise at Michigan, except Michigan's going to Nebraska, first year head coach, and the Buckeyes going to Badgerland and Wisconsin. Other than that, it's the same thing. But, you look at their ats in the Big Ten at Michigan, but Wisconsin, Rutgers, and Purdue, and Indiana to start things out. But how about at Notre Dame? At Notre Dame did wonders for Ohio State this past year. That's a big time, big letter game. Everybody here will be watching this one on September the 23rd. Ohio State at Notre Dame. But this thing looks pretty flimsy, to be honest. This schedule looks pretty easy for them. I think that Michigan and Ohio State will be undefeated when they meet in Ann Arbor on the 23rd of November. Someone mentioned the attendance, and it's something to brag about. I think bragging about getting, and they said 75,000. Hey, if it was 70, if it was 60, that was something to brag about. Plus, they were coughing up $7 a piece. Not even a bad day at the office when you're thinking about pulling some money in. Maybe they put it towards their name, image, and likeness. That could get it done. Get a down payment on a quarterback or something. 75,000 paying $7. That was something to, it is impressive. Opening up the gates and have that many people. But Kyle McCord, the number 6, he wasn't live. He was back there, did some things okay, but Devin Brown has a finger injury. He's out. There's still going to be a quarterback competition. But, if we had to guess, it'd say McCord, but it could be Brown. Who knows? Who cares? Who it ends up being. Maybe they'll play both of them. Maybe they'll screw it up. Whatever it is. But McCord just looked all right. And the offensive line is the big question mark for Ohio State. They got to replace 3 guys up there. And the guys that they had out there, especially that left tackle's got a lot of work to do. And that offensive line overall, McCord, they were handing out points for the Ohio State defense. Like if they got a 3-and-out, interception, a sack, they were ringing up the sacks. They were just pouring in on the helpless quarterbacks for the Buckeyes. Still a bunch of wide receivers. Not many of them played. The ones they did, like Tate, were impressive. Marvin Harrison Jr. was out there for a little bit. Obviously, he looked pretty good. Guy's a great wideout. And they kept talking about during the game and, reading up a little bit after about the accounts that, they all want to talk about how much better they're going to be on defense in the second year, knowing the terminology and being in the system of Jim Knowles, their DC, for the second year. And a lot of praise going out there for the defense. Certainly, they've got 3 good running backs. Michigan wanted the guy that was running wild on Saturday, and the other two didn't play, including Henderson, and he is a great back. So uh, I don't know about Ohio State's defense. They got a lot of star-studded players, but when it came down to Michigan last year, their defense was suspect. They gave up big plays. Can they match the physicality of Michigan? That's the question. And all last year, we can match the physicality. We can be physical. We can match the physicality of Michigan. And then they weren't able to do it. Ohio State can recruit as well, and they have as well as anybody. Where they're getting their players, and people say, well, it's like a big 7-on-7, and when it gets down and you play a team like Michigan, and remember, Michigan, the trend in college football was 7-on-7, throw it every down, light up the scoreboard, more of I say finesse, which translates into softness when you're talking about college football, but it's a little bit accurate. When you're pass blocking all the time, if you're an offensive lineman, instead of going forward, you're going back, and you're just trying to keep the defensive lineman off you. When you play a team against Michigan, it's different. Michigan's offensive line's firing off the ball, and they're going forward, moving forward in war and in football. That's what makes you aggressive. That really gets you going, and that's been how Michigan's been able to turn the table on Ohio State. Aggressive, physicality up front with their offensive line. That has been the number one thing and how Michigan's been able to do it. Mano a mano when it comes down to the Buckeyes, and you can say all year long, we're going to be ready for it, we're going to be ready for it. And even if they're practicing for it and they're talking about it again, but during the season, they're just not going to experience it game in and game out until they have to come up to Ann Arbor, and then it's going to be difficult for them. And they'll have a lot of fireworks up to that point, and they'll talk about we need to be physical and we're going to be ready for it. But then they're going to come up to the team up north, and Michigan's going to be ready for them. And they're coming right at them, and the old Mike Tyson line is going to apply to Ohio State again. They can have the greatest plan in the world until they get punched in the mouth. Everybody's got a great plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's the Tyson quote. And that's the one that Ohio State has to deal with. So good luck to them for that. Let's look at the film. There was one play, like as much as reading about Ohio State and they're getting praises about being in the second year and getting the terminology right, and they looked faster and more aggressive. People that were there, and that's what they were saying. And okay, they did. Except when we get to this play, let's take it to the Scarlet and Gray spring game. This is the one that really stood out to me. Let's watch this one. Old Trainum, who Michigan tried to get, he wanted to be a linebacker, but Ohio State said, you're a running back. Here he is. Look at this Ohio State defense. Toughness, speed, physicality. Woo! That looks strikingly similar to what we saw last year down in Columbus. That wasn't Trainum. It was the one-armed bandit that was doing that. Oh, they're excited. I think the 75,000 for a second, they're like, yeah, touchdown Ohio State. And then the guy next to him is like, yeah, does our defense really suck still? And I think they're like, I hope not. But so they don't know what to do. They're like, great job, train them. But then you look over there, all those, you see the Scarlet guys are over there. They look the same as they did last year. Look at there. No technique, arm tackling, flailing. That's a bad look. That is a bad look if you're Ohio State. It's very reminiscent. Well, let's take it back. Let's see if this is going to line up here. I think it is. Let's do this. Ready? Let's try it.
Here's Edwards with a lane. Donovan Edwards down the sideline. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown, Michigan. The Don.
Yeah. Let's see if I can cue it up. And then for those that are just listening to the pod, I'm playing the touchdown run from Ohio State, but I've got the Donovan Edwards highlight from last year. I want to get it queued up right where he hits the sideline, where he actually hits the sideline. Let's do it right here. Let's try it.
Here's Edwards with a lane. Donovan Edwards down the sideline. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown, Michigan. The Don.
Oh, I had it right there. Woo! That's it. Touchdown. The Don. You know, the Don did it twice. And so it didn't matter about coming back and doing it again. Look at these guys. They're just standing up. Now maybe that was the plan of the defense here. This is Jim Knowles saying, hey, go ahead, stiffen up. Don't worry about knee bends or getting off blocks or tackling. Maybe that was the thing. It was kind of like just, okay, we're going to get a score here. I don't know, but man, I agree with Ty here. I just looked over the first one. It is like they were playing without pads on. Now, I didn't see anything after the game. Maybe third base was like, yeah, you know, the defense, we just told them to kind of stand up there and play it loose right there. I don't know, but they didn't get any points. And if they were getting points for their defense, they should have taken some away there. Oh, that's it. Woo! The coach saying third base has to start on second base this year. Antoine's full of them today. I wish I had a rib shot. That's a great one. Be taking that one from you, Antoine. That's good. Mark says, funny how when Michigan plays Notre Dame, it's tough, but for OSU, it's easy kind of thing. Gary with the prediction that I like. You know, Gary, look at it was Richard who made everybody happy with the McCord joke. Antoine following it up with calling him third base has to start on second base this year. And now here's Gary with a little humor and a little fun on a Monday. Notre Dame will beat Ohio State. How about that? There's Ty saying that OSU will have a loss as well. And hey, AJ's making the prediction too. Everybody thinks Notre Dame's going to beat Ohio State. Before I knew the quarterback position, now I'm really for Notre Dame beating them. Richard wants to take it all the way back to first base. Third base has to start at first base. Not that. Dooney Dunn going to the record books. Notre Dame has never beaten OSU. Maybe finally they get it done this year. It's in South Bend. Ty says OSU needs help in the secondary at safety. You know, they were praising the new attitude of the safeties. I think is Burke number 10, and he's like the 5-star. You know, he's like the new attitude. You know, Scarlet and Gray. He better have a new attitude. I've watched that game enough. When Michigan's in the fourth quarter, certainly when they're in the second half, and McCarthy's down there, and he's running towards the goal line, as a defender, we have heard enough defenders. We have talked to enough people that have played defense where if the opposing team's quarterback in a rivalry game is right at the goal line, and you're playing defense and you've got a chance to go up and lay the wood, that's everything you dream about as a college football player playing in a rivalry game. And number 10 took a step towards the goal line and then turned his back and kind of got out of the way, got out of the way of J.J. McCarthy. And I went back to watch it because that's what it looked like on the film. And then you're thinking, maybe there was something else. Maybe McCarthy was already in the end zone. He didn't want to get flagged for 15, which, you know, sometimes you're and so no, that's not the case. JJ's getting ready to go into the end zone, and little number 10's over here. He didn't want any of it. And there's sometimes one play can be a microcosm of the game or the season Certainly one drive can be a microcosm. Sometimes it doesn't really happen. But on that one, it was. There was another one where 44 who didn't play, JT, that guy. He played one of the best single defensive games that I've ever seen by anyone, of any team, NFL or college. And it was against Penn State last year. That guy is an animal. As I was watching, I'm like, how is Michigan going to deal with him? Joel Honigberg took it and pancaked him and decleated him and slammed him and pushed him into the ground like a tune-up, planted him. That's one of the greatest blocks that I've ever seen. That said a lot about this rivalry. And oh yeah, Ohio State with a propensity to give up big plays as they were doing it with Kojo, who went for 69, and then Kojo, who went for 75, and then Donovan Edwards, who went for 75, and Donovan Edwards, who went for 85. That team, that defense, I'm not really sure that you go into spring and say, yeah, our defense looks a lot faster. They didn't look a lot faster than me. They didn't look very fast. They didn't look very fast on that Tranum run where it just kept happening. Maybe we can cue it up one more time.
Donovan Edwards.
We just sit around all day and do it.
Gets past Ransom.
I'm going to do it.
Donovan Edwards.
I enjoy doing it.
Michigan, the Don.
Yeah, the Don. Take me a couple seconds here to get her going. Let's crank it up. Crank it up. Get it just right. Get them up to the line of scrimmage. See where they're at. From there's the third or fourth string QB getting ready to go in. The Gray defense. This is still in the first half. The Gray defense is supposed to be bringing it. Tranum, third string, running back. There's first base right in there. Let's go with it right now.
Here's Edwards with a lane. Donovan Edwards down the sideline. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown, Michigan, the Don.
Yeah. It happened. Right there. Richard indicating that Notre Dame is overrated every year. They are. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Mark says that nobody's top quarterbacks live in spring. Soft compared to the game. Spring hitting everywhere is soft. As soft as what they had on that run, though, Mark? I mean, they're soft. And then there's kind of Charmin-like. It was like there's two-hand touch or even one-hand touch and flag football. And then there's thud tackling or thump tackling, whatever people want to call it, thump, which, they get to, and they call it thud. The Lions do, where you just get up there and you hit them. But this was a little powder puff. I don't know, a little powder puff, two-hand touch, but don't push the guy. Just you go, whoop. One hand. I don't know. Is there such thing as one-hand touch? I don't know if all right. That's it. When it comes down to that. How many people are agreeing with Mark? They think Ohio State is soft. Their offense makes their defense soft. Tony Dunn wants to go over the Michigan schedule. 3 toughest games, in his opinion, at Penn State, at Maryland, versus Ohio State. I agree. I agree with at Penn State being the toughest one. I'm going to still. They might beat Ohio State by more than Maryland, but it's because of who they are. And you tack a couple, 2, 3 extra on there. You get some Heisman style points if you're the Don, or if you're Blake Corum or JJ, whoever needs them. They get a couple more, but I'm with you. And you know what's interesting about this, Dune E. Don? is that this is Michigan's 10th game of the year. At Maryland is Michigan's 11th game of the year. And Ohio State is Michigan's 12th game of the year. These are the last 3 games of the regular season. And I think they are going to be the 3 toughest. I do think that Michigan is going to go undefeated into these 3 games. I think they could lose this one, and then win this one and this one. I'm pointing to winning Maryland and Ohio State. Even if they drop this one to Penn State, it could be similar to 2021. All is not lost. I like, Michigan to defend the Big Ten championship this year. I'm just not so sure. Is it undefeated or is it the one loss against Penn State? But it's no fun in the offseason. There's no real reason to do it anyway. It's like, who cares? I think just picking them to go 12-0, or you don't have to worry about it. Just say, they're going back to the college football playoff. Richard says it's a good life quote too, Dennis. What's that? Wake up on first base? I forgot what the quote was. Keep pouring it on until they cry. I don't remember which one it was. Let's see. We've got a little bit more coming at you. Ty says it was like they were playing without pads on. Yeah, the defense, it only gives up 4 or 5 big plays a game. I think you're right. Trevor liked it, which I liked. Antoine enjoyed the little dubbing. Oh, the great Hadley. Hadley, I think your nickname should be Haley, because you're like Haley's Comet. You only come around once every 77 years. But here he is today. Haley says, I heard the $7 for the Ohio State spring game were GA. If you wanted a reserve seat, general admission. If you wanted a reserve seat, you had to pay $25. Did you ever hear this? Also, the supposedly starting quarterback Brown didn't play. What do you know about him? I know that he's got a broken finger. That's what I knew about that. And that whether it was one of these things that coaches do, which is something you almost have to do, even if you really thought it was going to be McCord, you didn't want to name any starter coming out of spring. Or if that happened, Brown would be in the transfer portal, seeing what somebody else could do for him. And so you don't do that, and you make the competition go into the summer, even if you think it's going to be McCord all day long, and you play it out. That's what coaches have to do. And other than that, we'll see if we can find out a little bit more. But that's what I know about him. Hadley. That's it. Mark wants to be like, the straightforward approach on the spring. He doesn't think any of these teams are really all out in the spring, dusting off the first string, battling for second team down the roster. Only chance to play half the players. Yeah, you're getting a little bit too deep and being a little bit too making a little bit too much sense. I mean, these games, you're looking at the entertainment value. We've got 4 months until kickoff. And is it 5 months? Let's let's ridicule OSU where you can. I think that's the approach that you take during spring when you see it. David said, looked like they could have forced them out. I thought so too, but maybe first base was like, we need to get a little bit going here. We want our fans, we're charged them $7. We don't want them to start booing. We want to start booing everybody. You got to give it to Michigan these last 2 years. And I was on them 3 years ago for not having a spring game, but these last 2 spring games they've had have been very entertaining. I mean, they get it. And Michigan State, And I can remember the days where Michigan would go out there and it was a glorified practice. You'd see them going through the drills, and look, I'm as big of Michigan football fan as everyone, but it's fun for a couple minutes. Like, oh, hey, let's watch them go from drill to drill, and after a while, you're kind of like, all right, we're gonna get any action here. This is it. Then they like line up a little bit, and you just have to. If you're gonna have a spring game, you got to get out there and put them through the paces a little bit, however it's going to be, so we can get some kind of semblance of a game. Or else we're really just talking about practice, not a game. Practice. Burke, you're exactly right, David. That's the one. I'm not so big on him. That's what I hear. All right, and yeah, they had the old Miss guy that Michigan was in on for a second. Yeah, he was in the mix. Yeah, they've, name-wise, if we sit here and we're being honest, if it was about recruiting and the stars and it matters and everything, but when you look at the position, it's like, oh my God, that guy is a 5-star. That guy's a 5-star. That guy was everything. Look at these guys. Look, McCord was a 5-star. Everybody, I mean, their team is littered with talent. But they're missing something, and what they miss is Michigan is their kryptonite right now by the style of their play, and they are trying to adjust to that, the physicality that Michigan brings up front. But when they're playing, throw it around the parking lot and let's play grab ass 7-on-7. And then when it comes down to Michigan, who's ready to play, let's play Raider 70 punch you in the mouth football. You can't just flip a switch that way. There's no switch flipping when it comes down to that. And then now that Ohio State, and it's a question mark at the quarterback, but I'm going to go ahead and think that it's a downgrade from CJ Stroud with what they're going to have. Their offensive line, sure, I might make fun of it and say they're a revolving door and they look like a bunch of matadors and they can't block, they can't do anything up front, but they look like they're going to take a step back too with the guys that they have to replace. If this had even anything to do with anything, that their offensive line doesn't look as good. And McCord or Brown or whoever else, that's going to be a step back. And, you want to say Jim Knowles in the second year, that's what they're hanging their hat on? I don't know. If I was an Ohio State fan, would I be all excited about Jim Knowles hanging my hat? And after what I saw from him last year, the big play defense out there? Not really. Not really. Great talent. If I was an Ohio State fan, I'd hang my hat on being able to go toe-to-toe talent and fireworks wise with Georgia. I would. I mean, that's the game that I'm sure Ohio State fans, they're not talking about Michigan. They're talking about how they were, I don't know, a foot away from winning a national championship. Were they closer, Ohio State, to winning a championship than Michigan? Answer, yes. Even though they lost to them because they, I don't know, what was it? That field goal, maybe there was like 5 feet now that I think about it. I had a couple drinks close to midnight there. It was New Year's Eve. And so I'll say 3 feet. They were 3 feet away from a national championship, but I'll think that they would have, I would think that they would have been able to handle TCU in the championship game. So that's what they're hanging their head on. And that's good because if they're not thinking about Michigan and how Michigan didn't allow them to score, a touchdown in the second half? How many points did Ohio State score in the second half last year at home against Michigan? 3. So if they're thinking more about being 3 feet away from a national championship than only scoring 3 points in the second half against Michigan, that's right where Michigan wants them. If they're thinking like, oh, the defense looks way more faster, they're not going to be giving up big plays just because it's the second year with Knowles, that's what the offseason is for. It's like, hey, everything's going well, but the schedule looks pretty easy to me. when it comes down to it. I know the people are talking about 3 losses, and maybe it'll be against Notre Dame, at Indiana, Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, at Notre Dame. At Notre Dame. Does it really matter if they win or lose that one? Honestly, you want Ohio State to win this game, but we'll all be rooting for Notre Dame. That's the way it goes. Maryland in the shoe, at Purdue, new head coach, Penn State, at Wisconsin, at Rutgers, Michigan State, Minnesota, and then at the university up north, team up north, that's what they call Michigan. At Ton, these guys. That kind of shows to me that the team up north is in your head. When you can't even say the other team's name, they're in your head. And you want to say it if you're a fan. You want to say it if you're a former player. If I was first base, I would be telling these guys, hey, look, we're not treating Michigan like everybody else, but we're not going to be so consumed with these little these gadgetry and we're going to block out all of the M's. There's some of that stuff traditional and all that, but you guys, they got a clock. These guys got a clock. They've got X's all over the university, over at the Woody. Yeah, I would do away with this part. But I also have to crawl into an Ohio State mindset. And, that's where you got to drive yourself into the deep south of Ohio and start thinking like them. And, they're going to charge the $1,000 a ticket. They still would have drawn 75,000. What else are they doing down there? Nobody's watching anything. I know all the sports teams up here suck right now, but what do you think? They're all thinking about the Blue Jackets off season? I mean, you got Ohio State football, and that's it. That's the only thing that goes on. They're not worried about the Ohio Bobcats or anything. They just want to know about, or the Browns or the Bengals. Maybe the Bengals. I hear about Ohio State. We'll take a few more on the feedback. Let's see what the folks are saying. David says, Wisconsin better not. All right. Sorry. I don't know what that one was saying. I tried. It wasn't working really good. Gary asking about somebody named Bob Ufer. Do you remember Bob Ufer from the Michigan broadcast? He was awesome. Yes, Gary. Life is funny at times. Funny in that you go back and you try to remember your early days. What was your first ball game, or was your first, whatever. But when it comes to Michigan, I don't actually remember what the first Michigan game I watched. But I do remember Brent Musburger, giving it the "you're looking live" and, laying it on thick like it is Schembechler against Hayes. And I was fired up. I do remember that, being a youngster, diving over the couch, being all excited. But the funny part about Bob Ufer is I can recall my dad being in the car with him. I can remember the car. I can remember the exact spot in the parking lot and where he was living. And I can remember it as clear as day when he said, I'm going to turn on the radio. You can't believe this guy from Michigan. This guy's going to fall out of the radio booth. This guy, when a call goes against him, you've never heard anything like it. That was the buildup, and he turned on the radio. And we listened to Bob Ufer to wherever we were driving. And we would all laugh because, there was nothing. I'd never heard anything like Bob Ufer, and I've never heard anything like him since. Back in the 90s, they were going to do a movie, and I think that they were going to have, I think Tom Hanks was going to play Bob Ufer. And I don't know if I don't know the stages of, getting to a movie and how it was just talk or whatever. They never did have it. Maybe one day somebody will do one. Hell, get Tom Hanks to do it. He'll still be pretty good at it. OT talking about the Penn State quarterback saying he needs lots of improvement if Michigan's going to lose to him. Is it Drew Aller? Yeah, the highly rated, big kid. We've seen him a little bit. Saw him last year. Sound like you're somebody that watched the Penn State game. Richard, honking the Ufer horn. I feel like I should have that over here on the buttons. And I don't. I did when I worked in Ann Arbor. I held the Schembechler scoring horn and honked it. It was fun. His son, who I think still runs the insurance company, he would bring it out to the tailgate. Forget it. Brown transferred to the bench. Ringo, Bob Ufer, or Frank Beckman. Nothing against the late Frank Beckman, but I'll go with Bob Ufer on that. I don't know, like you could take Frank Beckman and Brandy and Doug Karsh, and you could put them all together, and it's Bob Ufer. Actually, you could go with any broadcasters or all broadcasters in Detroit history. Bob Ufer. And I think I'd pick Bob Ufer. But, it's tough when you put Ernie Harwell and George Cal in the mix and Bruce Martin. So, but Bob Ufer, there's only one Bob Ufer. As great as Ernie Harwell was, and he was great. There's nothing like listening to a ball game with Ernie Harwell. There are other guys that were his peers, the Vin Scullys. They were great. The Bucks, not Jack Buck. It's great baseball play-by-play guys and other, great broadcasters. But there was only one Ufer. I don't know if there's anybody anywhere. If there's another guy that's close to Bob Ufer in style, I have never heard of. Mark with some spring hype for Notre Dame. They claim to have the best running back room in the country. That's spring hype to you. Well, during the Penn State game, they put up their two running backs, and it was something like with the, I'll have to grab it maybe for tomorrow, and it said, best duo in the country? Of course, anybody that was Michigan watching that, like, no. You taking somebody in front of Blake Corum and the Don? Count 22 is not too worried about McCord. Ringo saying something that I said from a couple of years ago, that Fields played terrible. Yeah, he did. I was overconfident off of that, Ringo. So, so just have some fun, rag on Ohio State. Yeah, McCord isn't all that special. The offensive line, is a big block of Swiss cheese. Their defense is really coming along. All of those things in the second year on the Knowles. Yeah, they're going to be but you remember that. And then it was Fields. I watched that first game and he threw like 6 touchdown passes. Was moving around. I was like, well, it didn't take long to see it. Count 22 says, old McCord would have thrown 4 picks if the DBs didn't have brick hands. I love it. It's some feedback from Pure Montana, who wants to Fire Jawan and hire Dutch. Yeah. Well, being disgusted, probably not, but being disappointed, disgusted's fine. For not making the NCAA tournament is understandable. And, saying fire Jawan, I wouldn't fire Jawan. And I know that there was never a way that it was going to happen with Ward Manuel. He wasn't doing that either. And so if I'm not doing it, and, so you want to do it, it's not, you're not giving him very much time to see if he can come back after what he was able to accomplish in his first 3 years. And Pure Montana, I mean, how quickly would you have pulled the trigger on Jim Harbaugh? Now, look, I thought it was very, I don't want to say appropriate, but I understood why people after his 6th season were ready to move on from Jim Harbaugh. I didn't think that was overboard. I didn't think that was, you just want everybody fired. No, I was actually calling for that myself. But this is a little premature on Jawan. And also, Brian Dutcher's 157 years old. Nothing against him. He's had a great season. I don't want to sound like ageism or anything else. Hell, I'm 52. But, Dutch is closer to retirement than he is to running a program. And, a little bit of history lesson with Michigan. And I know, hey, we've all moved on and everything else. But Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher as his lead assistant, they were shown the door and fired because there was an Ed Martin situation where Ed Martin was trying to launder his illegal gambling money through Michigan basketball players by giving, like Chris Webber, at least $280,000. And Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher let Ed Martin stay on the same floor with those guys in their hotels. He was on the comp ticket list. He would just come rolling right into the arena. And you know what Fisher said was his defense, and Dutcher's too. Their defense. Now, you could say a lot of things like, hey, Martin was giving money to everybody. He was giving money to guys that went to Syracuse and, guys that went to Michigan State. I mean, he was throwing money anywhere. Anybody from Detroit he was giving money to, which is true. But Fisher's defense was, I didn't know anything about it. And Dutcher's defense was ignorance. We had no idea that this was going on. So, because if they could have come up with something a little bit better than Fisher, I don't know. We didn't know what was going on. He was staying on the same hotel. What did you think? This guy, you think Uncle Ed was just staying on the same floor and getting free tickets just because everybody liked him? They should have known. Ignorance is not a good defense. So he is blacklisted. There's no way Dutcher could win 3 straight championships or go to 3 straight Final Fours with San Diego State and Michigan wouldn't hire. They can't. Let's be honest about that. That wasn't happening. But, a little history lesson for you. Pure Montana. I was talking about OSU defeated Georgia. Okay, we're getting down to the end of the show. Oh, the refs gave it to Georgia. The refs gave it to TCU. I try not to get too caught up in referee. I try to, I say all that. I try not to get too caught up into Ed Martin scandal or, referees or, but what am I going to do? This could happen. Would I take, we'll play that game. Would I take Michigan going 11-1 and the loss coming at Happy Valley. I would if you can guarantee me that Michigan still goes to the Big Ten title game, which then would get them to the college football playoff, which would still get them in line to get to the championship game and win a national championship. I would take that. Now, you might be. Now, that's the, we're hypothetical and we're talking genies, and you might sit back there and say, no, I would not take a guaranteed spot in the Big Ten championship game because I would have to suffer through one loss at Penn State. I would not take that. I would have to say, look, what we're getting here is another win against Ohio State, and you're still getting back. It's just like 2021. You're still getting a crack at it. This is no like, but you're not going to the college football playoff. No, nobody's taking that. You're not getting to the Big Ten. No, you're not taking that. So if you add that Michigan still gets to go to, I would do that. You're just making your predictions. That's all. Let's get to the very end here and see what everybody else has to say about the show. Oh, we have a Buckeye in the house. Where's he at? Was that Pure Montana? Pure Montana is all about Penn State. That's it. There's a little Larry Ulsterman. Richard's as old as me. Not many people know who Larry Ulsterman is, but that's going back into broadcast days of old. Mickey is still great. I think he's referring to Mickey Redman, the color analyst on Red Wing games. I would agree with that. I'm a big fan of Mick. Let's just run through all of them. We've got time. Currently, Ken Cal, Dan Dickerson. Ken Cal of the Red Wings, Dan Dickerson with the Tigers. Mr. Miller, when it comes to the Lions, I think all three of those guys are as good as it gets. For the Pistons, George Blaha on the TV side. I know that he does Michigan State football games, and I know that immediately for Michigan fans, some are like, pass. Even though he's a Notre Dame guy, which, that double whammy might be enough again for you guys to be like, but I love George Blaha. I think he's, he's the best. And I like Redmond. I've got my own like personal things against a couple of the guys that I don't mention, but I liked Redmond. Let's see I like Shep on the TV side. He's a good guy. The Tigers are just in a tough spot. Shep came along when the team was floundering or has been floundering, and people have to take it out on, and they've taken it out on the broadcast crew a lot. And he gets hit for that. But I like him. I think that covers all of them. There's no need to get into all the other stuff. So tonight, I'm going to watch along with watching 4 Stanley Cup playoff series and 2. I'm going to watch 1 NBA playoff series, and I'm definitely going to be watching Boston tonight. I'm going to have to find a spot to watch that Penn State spring game. I'm just going in. And tomorrow, we'll talk about the Nittany Lions. As far as I said, I'd give you an update on basketball. It's where it was from Friday, and that is you're still sitting there if you're a Michigan fan. Dickinson has been on the move. I saw a picture of him at Georgetown and I think at Maryland visiting, and I think he's making a visit to Kansas. You guys probably know exactly. You're right up on top of it. Everything else. Matthew Cleveland, I hadn't seen anything about him over this weekend, and Olivier Kamwu from Tennessee. He's the guy that Michigan, if there's a spot, would be the most likely guy that the Wolverines would land. But right now, Michigan also needs to find a scholarship because they're booked. They've got 13 right now, so they need one to open up, or they're not getting anybody. If they get an opening sooner rather than later, I think that they'll be able to get one of these guys, with the likelihood being Kamwu. And then these two guys would be long shots, Cleveland and Dickinson probably even being a longer shot. But I don't know. If you had somebody saying Dickinson's not as long a shot as you think, I would say that, hey, you might be right. That's just my own feeling on it from everything that I've looked at and what I know. Larry Osterman was George Kell's broadcast partner for the Tigers. Well, let's go out to Larry Osterman. About that, Richard. Mr. Osterman, you are so right. Well, that's going to do it. The final here from Tiger Stadium. The Tigers win it 6-3. We'll talk to you in Baltimore on Friday. That'll do it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow here on the show. We'll see you in a little while on the Maize and Blue Review as we talk about all the things that we're discussing here all day and all night. That's why you join up at michigan.rivals.com. Till tomorrow. See you then. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for watching. And have a great day.